How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, the review is going to be the state of the game. Now, it's been a little while since I've done one of these, but I feel like there's a lot to talk about right now, and I really want to be able to put out my thoughts. Let me know what you think about it down below in the comment section. If you haven't already checked out my sponsors over at Imperium, Dragonshield, Gem, Cloud, RW, Grimoire, definitely go ahead and check them all out down below in the description. Follow Twitter, follow Twitch, join the Discord as well, join the family. It's a lot of fun in there, a lot of people testing, a lot of different conversations about the game and whatnot. So a lot of very like-minded people to really be able to move forward in the game with. But without further ado, let's hop right on into the state of the game. So the first thing is Tenpai. We hate this deck. It's just so annoying. It's so just not skillful. It is currently, by percentage, the best deck in the game at the moment. 18.8% versus 17.4%. If you're not familiar with this site, it's GGYGO Pro Deck. I talk about it a lot. It's a very good site for resources. Technically, Tenpai is the best deck right now by percentages. So that's pretty crazy. That's something that you have to be ready for this deck. But why does everyone keep losing to it? Because they're not playing these cards. Now, Tenpai is starting to play Crossout for T-Roar. But you can also play Thunder of Ruler, Restful Height, Spiritual Sword, Curry Photon. These are so many cards that you can activate against Tenpai, and they literally pass. There's nothing they can do about that unless they have cross out for each one of your targets. So, heavily recommend that you have something like this in your deck. Even if you have to bluff set Rise or Spiritual Sword, the odds that they blow it up with like a Lightning Storm or something are very high. So that's something where you can just set it and then be like, all right, cool, they blew it up. You can target one of your monsters after using IP effect and it'll resolve backwards. So you get rid of the monster, they can no longer attack anything. So Tenpai is a very scary deck. If you play against it, it's definitely something where you're like, wow, this sucks. So at my last case tourney, I T-roared 2 different Tenpai players and they both lost. Crazy, right? So let's drop the percentage on this deck by just playing the backward blowout. They're going to spell and trap wipe you and kill you? Funny. Let's just set one card and pass, and then your opponent loses. That is one thing that I am very happy about, because you can play Thrust if they Fuwa you, if they Purley you, if they Shifter you. Set one of these, win the game. It's just that easy. Now, this is what your format looks like right now. You do have the Millennium deck, which is a shifter deck. It's going to be around. It is like a crazy one-punch kill deck, and then there's also like Secret Village. This deck has a lot of potential. It's fairly cheap right now too. So if you're looking for a very competitive deck with a bit of a nostalgic feel, definitely play the Millennium deck. I think it's very cool. Tenpai. We have Fire King, Snake, Yubel, Centurion, Labyrinth, which is Equation Lab. There is no other variant of Labyrinth right now that is worth playing. If you're not playing Math Lab, you're behind. The Rescue deck is really strong because it plays better into the Molcharmies. And then you have Ritual Beast, which kind of folds to the Molcharmies. If your opponent can do any kind of a board, then they'll probably be okay if they do like a Protoss lock against you, if it really matters at that point. But by the cards that you're already drawing, it should be very hard for them to play. A lot of people are starting to play things like Iron Wall and Lancia now too. So it's becoming really hard to be a Ritual Beast player. So that's something to keep in mind. I really do think the deck is still like okay, but there's just been countless amounts of counters. And let's not even talk about the amount of counters that are coming out by the next set that just beat Malice. And I think that's crazy too, because a lot of people were really excited about that deck, and now everyone's kind of like, yikes, because we have the new Link 4 now that you can keep looping Lancia as well, which is crazy. And then you also have the new Molcharmy that draws every time your opponent summons from the Banished. People are already playing Lancia now, so there's definitely a lot of very cool things that we have for that deck coming up. Is this more broken than Fuwa? And the answer is kind of. I think that this card is really broken. It's solemn from hand, and I mean, what more could you ask for at that point, right? I do think that Max C is still Max C, and it's still very game warping. Do I think that you can play around a Fuwa more than you can play around an Impulse? Yes. So in that regard, I would say that Impulse is more broken than a Fuwa, just because it's really hard when you're like, Seals bounce, Seals effect to summon, and you need that summon to go off, and all of a sudden they're just like, nah, Impulse is crazy. And then if you're playing as Mimigul, they really feel like this card's more broken than Fuwa, But I always think that Perulia is better than Fua, to be honest. I think Perulia in most situations is better than Fua because if you're playing against things like Snake Eyes, they will give you like 3 draws. Playing against Yubel, they're going to give you like 3 draws. If you're playing against Kashtira, if you're playing against Flu, if you're playing against VS, if you're playing against Ritual Beast, there's so many decks where if you're playing against Perulia, you're kind of SOL. This card's insane. Summoning from hand is definitely the most broken part of Yu-Gi-Oh! I feel, because that's where we're really summoning a lot. Even against tier, if I get a Perulia dropped on me, it sucks. So that's one thing where you kind of have to understand your play lines, and you can also play around a Fua more than you can play around a Perulia, because this just drops in draw phase, and it's like, well, if you want a normal summon, you have to give me a draw, and then if you want to extend, you have to give me draws. So that's something else that is like really insane. But Perulia, in my opinion, it goes like Perulia, Impulse, Fua right now in terms of cards that are like the best in the game. And then Shifter would be somewhere in there, right? I think Shifter is probably like way up top, and then it's Perulia, and then it's Impulse, and then it's Fua. So those are definitely the most broken cards in the game at the moment. One of the cards that I think is really underrated right now is Super Poly. This is what got me all the way to X1 at the case tourney, and I will be playing this moving forward in my deck list. I think this card is absolutely absurd. Being able to just destroy boards immediately with this card is really, really strong, especially when there's a Sylvia on the board, and you can go ahead and get rid of that and something else. Let's say even like a Desiree, someone like a Dragonshield. You do have to deal with like the Desiree effect after, but just as an example, but I do think that this card has a lot of room in the format right now, and you definitely should be playing this card if you have the room for it. Now, Unicorn has been seeing a lot of deck play right now. It's definitely interesting because of the fact that you can rip the extra deck. It was more popular when Fiendsmith was more popular because you could rip Requiem and Princess. I do think that Unicorn is a-okay right now, though, because of the fact that you do get Birth, and then you have Unicorn on top of that. So even if you're just ripping Promethean Princess, and then you're getting rid of cards in the graveyard, I still think that it's worth playing if you have the room for it. That's why we're seeing this in things like Mimigal, because this card is absolutely absurd. And it's also where your opponent's holding Fua, so if you summon Unicorn and they Fua you after, then you get a free extra deck rip. And then if they start their turn with any effect, you can go ahead and use Unicorn again to rip a second card. So that's where Unicorn's seeing a lot of flair right now. I think this card's very, very strong. Honestly, there's a spot on the ban list for it again at 1 if we start seeing it become a huge staple in decks. Which would be funny to see Unicorn hit again before Fenrir gets hit at all. But I think that Unicorn's always been the more broken card for sure. This game has really turned into Shifter or Be Shifted. And it's annoying because there's 5 decks in the game right now, like the metagame at least, that are all playing Shifter. So you do have to make sure that you're on top of this and you have cards to make sure that you're not just going to auto die. That is definitely going to be problematic. And like Lancia is only on your opponent's turn, which is really annoying. I wish it was on either player's turn. But this is definitely something where Shifter will be an issue moving forward, and you have to find ways around this. Find your turn skips. The other thing too is like Ritual Beast, I don't know why no one's doing this, but like summon Harpy Conductor and then just Featherstorm from hand. That's so broken. Like if you get Peruliad or if you get like Fuad, just storm them, you know, it's crazy. That's one thing too where I've been seeing a lot of lists and no one's really been doing that. So like if you ever get into situations where you get hit by a hand trap that you can't really do much about, like even if you get hit with Lancia in that deck, you can go normal summon, Harpy Conductor, and then of course you had to draw into your Featherstorm because there's no way to like just get to it unless you have a thrust, right? Which is also fine because you can thrust set it. And that's one thing where you can just skip your opponent's turn at that point because they skip your turn. So these are the things you have to think about, and I know that's like how Yu-Gi-Oh has gotten a lot more toxic over the years, is just because like it's really skip their turn or have your turn skipped, right? That's really what it comes down to. And that's kind of where we're at. But if you can adapt to that and make sure that you're skipping the turns over as much as they're skipping you, then I think you'll be okay. But I do hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you haven't already joined my Twitter, Twitch, Discord, or Instagram, definitely go and do so. Subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 30,000. I'll catch you all in the next video. I appreciate you all. Have a great day.